the paranormal to the extraordinary, from the weird to the wonderful. This is On the Odd.
Speaking with Ian this evening. How are you, Ian?
Doing pretty well. Good to talk to you.
Thank you so much for taking the time. Just want to say Ian was a member, or I'm not sure where you actually stand with the Mormon Church. Are you still part of the organization, or?
That's a good question, actually. I guess technically my name is still on the records of the church. I haven't had my name removed from the records.
Okay.
But I would not consider myself to be a Mormon anymore.
No, you say the records. Are there is there an entire database of Mormons?
Yeah, just the records of the church.
Okay.
So when you join the church, whether if you've grown up in the church or if you convert to Mormonism, you get baptized, and once you're baptized, you're officially a member of the church, and you have a record and everything. And so a lot of people, when they leave the church, you can kind of just leave the church and forget about it.
In that sense, where you could find a new church, and it's no big deal. You don't have to have something transferred or anything like that.
Yeah, but there's still that record there, and they still consider you a member of the church. But you can go through the process of having your name removed from the records and everything.
But if you were to say move,
I haven't done that.
If you decided to move to, I live in Long Island. I realize there's quite a few Latter-day Saints and Mormon churches around, more than I expected actually, and. So you'd be able to do that. You could just kind of go into and say, hey, I'm new to the neighborhood and I want to continue my faith here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and the Mormons are actually really good at kind of keeping track of their members. So if you move and they kind of know where you are, they'll move the records to whatever group is closest to where you live.
Now, what's in the records? Is this a physical record? It's on your...
Yeah, it's a physical record. It has your information, your family information. It has the date of your baptism, the date of the different ordinances that you go through.
Right.
And I don't know if there's other information on there, but it's just just your membership record keeps track of. Mostly, I think it's the ordinances, your family, stuff like that.
I guess in a lot of ways, it's a good organizational type of thing.
Yeah.
And how long were you with the Mormons? Is this something you were born into?
Yep. So I was born and raised. So
how old are you? If you don't mind me asking.
I'm 35.
Okay, younger than me.
And yeah, born and raised in the church, and grew up in Salt Lake City, Utah, the heart of Mormondom there.
Yeah, and
lived there most of my life, and born and raised in the church. And I left the church. I guess it's been about a year and a half now.
Oh, so it's relatively
pretty
new.
recent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did something? I'm going to say probably just like everyone else in the whole world, when you're going through your teenager years, you're rebelling. And, was this a period of time where you kind of thought, what am I doing? Or is it something where you were really embracing it? I ask because I live in a very Orthodox Jewish neighborhood. And although I'm a
yeah.
Jewish person, the Orthodox or the Hasidic, they're a lot more extreme. They,
Oh yeah.
you know, they practice every holiday, and there are a lot of them. But you'll meet a kid who's like 14, 15 years old, and although he's rebelling maybe in his own way, he's totally into Judaism.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
So yeah, growing up for me, you know, everybody has kind of a different experience in that whole process. For me, you know, as a teenager, I kind of just, I would guess I say in general, I believed the tenets of the church.
Mm-hmm.
I went to church. I never made a fuss of like not going to church or anything like that. There's a lot of rules in the Mormon church, which a lot of people have probably heard about. Not as strict as Orthodox Judaism,
Right.
but a lot of people make fun of Mormons for you know, certain things that they're not allowed to do.
Well, I'd say they're pretty easy targets when it comes to that. I think there's a lot
Exactly,
of cheap shots, actually.
Definitely.
You know, I think the first thing that people are really kind of taken back by is, you know, their undergarments. Their
Yeah, and we
and
can
what is the
get into
official
that.
word on that? You know, what do you call those?
Yeah, so let me back up just a little, and I'll get into that. It's okay. It's
I
okay.
also have my new poodle that's running around the house. I don't know how he got up here in my office.
Oh
but,
yeah.
So I'm just gonna.
That can be distracting. My wife and kids are out of town today, so I don't have that distraction. So
it's nice to have a nice quiet house.
Yeah. So yeah, as a teenager, I was in the church. You know, went to all the things. You know, I'd say generally I believed it, but didn't really follow all the rules. Went through my rebellious stage in junior high and high school.
Right.
But eventually, you know, near the end of high school, I kind of came back in line, started more following the rules, and decided to go on a mission. That's, you know about Mormon missionaries, I'm sure.
Yes.
So I went on a mission for 2 years, and that was when I was 19. Came back a few years after I was back, got married, had kids and everything. But yeah, so I had my rebellious stage, but most of my life, I would say, I pretty much followed the tenets of the church there.
So throughout your
let's
20s
go,
and everything, yeah, I mean, throughout your 20s, you're basically following the church. And did you meet your wife through the church and, you know, all that kind of stuff?
So, yep, I got back from, when you go on a mission.
By the way, if I ever
mission,
bring up anything that's a little too personal, just let me know. I mean, I'm not going to.
Okay, no problem. No problem. Yeah, so in the Mormon church, all male members are expected to serve a mission.
Mm-hmm.
Women, if they want to, they can, but it's not really expected of them. Men,
it's
it's expected.
Type of thing. Okay.
Exactly, yeah. So the men, they're expected to go and serve for 2 years, and you don't get to choose where you go. You just say, all right, I'm ready to go. And you send in some paperwork and they tell you where you're going to be for the next 2 years. And when you're done with that, so I left when I was 19. So I was 21 when I got
from
home.
The mission when you were 19?
Left when I was 19, got back around 21.
Gotcha.
And when you leave the mission, they tell you your next assignment, basically your next obligation, is to get married. It's stressed pretty highly that, okay, now you're done with your mission, now it's time to get married, start your family.
Wow.
The Mormon church is very family centric.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of your obligation is to, get married and start a family.
Now, is it about populating the world with Mormons? Or is
partially, yeah. I mean, there's the old doctrines of, we believe in a pre-earth existence before we came here. So in the church, we believe that there's spirits waiting in heaven to come down and get a body.
Now you're saying we believe, as in a current tense. Is this still your faith and your belief?
It's not my faith and belief whatsoever. It's just, I guess it's just easier to say it that way.
Yeah, no, I got you.
Yeah. So, yeah, currently I would consider myself more of basically an agnostic atheist.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I just kind of refer to it that way, I guess, I guess technically I'm still a Mormon
Now,
since I'm on the record, but.
Were there a number of things that happened where you were losing your faith over a period of time, or there was, and you know what, sometimes when people say you're losing your faith, it almost seems like a personal attack, and I don't mean it like that. I mean it more along the lines of,
okay.
You know, the faith itself letting you down.
Yeah.
You know, maybe not doing what you were sold. You know, you're sold this one particular bill of goods, and you're not getting it.
No, that's a great question. It's really funny. I went to this atheist meetup group just the other day, and I told, we were kind of all sharing stories, and I told the group, oh yeah, I used to be a Mormon. I just left recently, and all of them were like, how could you even be a Mormon in the first place? Don't you know Joseph Smith was just a fraud? Like, everybody knows Joseph Smith was a fraud. How did you not know that?
Again, such a cheap shot. I mean,
yeah.
It's like, all right, it's not the oldest religion in the world, but they are all started kind of in a very similar way.
Exactly. And so it's one of those things, like you said, I grew up in the church. It was what I was taught my whole life. But it came to a point, some people will leave the church pretty quickly. For me, I was a very devout follower, a full 100% believer. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I was very into reading the scriptures, reading the history of the church, a lot of that stuff, because I took it pretty seriously. And as I got more and more into reading historical things of the church, I realized, okay, there's some issues here that aren't quite what I was taught my whole life. I went to church, I went to seminary. In high school, you take an hour out of school every day to go learn about the church. Mm-hmm. I did everything that you're supposed to do, all the classes and everything. There's all this stuff now that I'm reading. It was about a 5-year-long process for me, of delving into the history, realizing
it really sounds a lot like a Pentecostal Christian. Because what they do is, they really dedicate their time to Bible study, or even Baptists tend to study very deeply in their own church, their own scriptures. Now, you're talking about the Book of Mormon, right? And that is your Bible.
We use, we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 books of scripture. The Bible would be considered 2, so Old Testament and New Testament. We have the Book of Mormon, so that'd be the 3rd one, and then we also have something called, I guess there's 2 more, something called the Pearl of Great Price and something called the Doctrine and Covenants. So those are, when we say scriptures, it could be any or all of those. Mm-hmm. So we believe all of those things, or I guess Mormons, I should say, believe that all of those are the Word of God. And the Book of Mormon is just one of many scriptures. And I can give you kind of a brief outline of where they come from if you want to hear that. Or,
sure. I mean, that's what I would love to have you do is, I guess basically explain it for people who might have no experience in Mormonism. Is that
okay?
A word? And,
So let me maybe go over kind of the core doctrines. I'll try to be brief, but and then that'll make it really clear for you. So the core beliefs in Mormonism is that I kind of wrote down a few things here for my notes. Cool. We believe, the church members, I should say, believe that, there is a God who is a man with a flesh and bones. We believe in the Son, Jesus Christ, the Holy Ghost. And then we believe that there's this truth that God revealed the gospel to Adam and Eve in the garden, right? The first people. and they had the true gospel.
Now, is this a literal belief?
Literal belief. Yep.
Okay. All right.
God created Adam and Eve literally. They lived in a garden. It's all full literal belief there.
Mm-hmm.
And
the rib and everything, you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you get really into it, the Garden of Eden was in Missouri, but we'll skip all that stuff for now.
I don't even mean to laugh at that. I mean, why not? You know, why
not?
Be in Missouri?
Exactly. It could be anywhere, right?
Right.
And so there's this truth, and then Adam lives his life, and eventually the people kind of lose the truth. Things get diluted and changed over time, and the truth is lost. And so God calls another prophet. The next one would be Enoch, and he restores the truth back to the earth, and that's why he's such a great prophet. And then this cycle of apostasy continues. So they bring back the truth to the earth, and eventually things get diluted and lost and changed, and then it's lost again. They calls another prophet. So we have this cycle of prophets. So it goes Adam, Enoch, Noah, Moses, and then, Moses restored it, the whole children of Israel, everything, got them to the promised land, and then things get diluted and distorted again. And so Christ comes to set that all back in order and fixes things again. So he's not only a prophet along that same timeline, but the Son of God, so much more than just a prophet. But then, according to the church, that truth again was lost after Jesus's time, that it was distorted, things were taken away, things were added and changed. And so then we ended up, with all these different churches, everybody believing different things. So what is the real truth? And that's where Joseph Smith comes in. He, the belief is that God and Jesus Christ, who both are personages with a body of flesh and bone living up in heaven, they came down and personally visited with him and charged him to be the next prophet to restore the truth back to the earth. Mm-hmm. and start a new church, to bring not just the truth, but the authority to act in God's name, which is a big thing.
That was in 1830, right? Or in the early 1800s?
Yep. So his vision was in the late 1820s, or somewhere in around 1820-ish. I'm bad with dates, but the church was officially established, 1830.
I mean, so we're getting close to a bicentennial.
Yeah.
Which is, that's something,
Yeah, definitely. And so now the belief is that the church is going to, the truth was restored to the earth. It's going to grow and grow and grow, and eventually it'll fill the world. And the purpose now is to prepare the world to preach the gospel to as many people as possible, to all the world, and prepare the world for the second coming of Christ. And so that's the goal of the church, is to just teach everybody about the truth that has been restored, because everybody else out there, all the other churches, they have some truth. Every church, that's one of the things that I actually really loved about Mormonism was we believed in taking all truth, whatever source it comes from. We believe in all truth. So the church constantly, I was taught that truth exists everywhere, but we take the truth from all sources and combine it into one full truth.
Well, who's to say what's true and what's not? Which is where I think it gets very complicated.
It does, definitely.
It is strange. Over the years, you do have the Old Testament, the New Testament, all written by man. Same thing, the Torah was written by man at some point. And change, the King James version, there's, where stuff does get altered. And I can't, I kind of had a conversation with somebody who, they were a fascinating person, they were a born again Christian. Uh-huh. And I said, well, how do you know that, that what you're reading, which was physically written by man, that it's accurate? That's the word of God. You're saying it's the word of God. Interpreted by man. And they basically just go to their they basically call it magic in a lot of ways. God
Yeah.
wouldn't allow it to be altered, or it would always go back to the way it would normally be, like memory foam or something.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
just never understood that. I think that's where all of these organized religions, including my own, fall apart.
Yeah, and that's where Mormonism solves all the problems.
Oh no!
According,
what are you trying to do? Sell me to this?
Well, I'm taking it I'm sharing it from a believer's perspective.
I got you.
But yeah, that's exactly where Mormonism has the answers. So what we say is that we believe the Bible to be the Word of God as far as it is translated correctly. But then the other scriptures are the Word of God so the Book of Mormon was translated. The Book of Mormon is apparently a record of Jewish people living in Jerusalem 600 years before Christ who escaped before the city was attacked or taken over or whatever. And they sailed across the sea to America. And this is the record. Yeah, that's
interesting.
Exactly. You didn't know your people were
that I didn't know.
were seafarers, huh?
No, I didn't.
I say that in jest. But
us dark-skinned Afro Jerusalem.
Yes, exactly. So the Book of Mormon is the record of the Hebrew people in America in ancient times.
Wow.
Whose descendants eventually became the American Indians. So it's a record of those people and what happened to them. And so Joseph, he found, apparently, God told him, an angel appeared to him and told him where these gold plates were. You've probably heard about. So he goes
can I just ask you, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Those seafaring people were Jews. So,
yeah.
But there's no correlation between Judaism and Native American cultures, or languages like Lakota or.
Exactly.
Does that get explained, or is it just Jews got bored and they decided to live off the land?
You're exactly right. There is absolutely no correlation whatsoever. Yeah. But when you grow up with that taught your whole life, there's lots of little.
Sure,
things
even
that
Christopher Columbus, it's like we believe this up to a point, or I did.
Exactly. So the way we're taught it is that there are these little correlations, and there's these different things that make sense and whatever. And it getting into the history, I learned, okay, yeah, there's absolutely no correlation there.
Yeah, we wouldn't have been able to handle the winters.
There you go.
There's no way. No way. There's a lot of complaining people.
Yeah, and so, there is no evidence for that whatsoever, but the church finds all these little nuanced ways to find
it makes for a good
little
story.
Things. Yeah, exactly. But, the church still believes that as a literal thing.
Wow.
Joseph found the gold plates, which were the records kept by those people, and translated it, and that's how we got the Book of Mormon. So... and that's the Book of Mormon. Then there's the other scriptures are the Doctrine and Covenants. Those are Joseph Smith's direct revelations from God that were written down.
Now, he translated something through a special pair of glasses, from what I recall.
Yeah.
I do know a little bit.
Yeah, the glasses.
But the glasses, whatever, were the glasses ever, are they a relic? Do they exist? No. All right. Same thing with a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, none of the relics exist except one that I can think of. So apparently, when he found the plates, he dug up a rock on this hill in upstate New York. Dug up this.
Where in New York, actually, if you don't mind? Do you know? I'm on Long Island.
I should know this. It's upstate New York.
The Book of Knowledge will know it. Google.
It's the Hill Cumorah. But I don't know exactly where that is. It's upstate New York. Palmyra, I think I want to say. Somewhere near Palmyra. I'm really bad with
that's all right.
Names and dates, but...
Yeah, Palmyra. I don't know where that is.
Yeah, so that's where Joseph was living at the time.
Just want to see how far it is from my house.
Yeah, there you go. if you go there, there's a bunch of stuff dedicated to the whole thing. I've never been there, but yeah, so he goes and the angel tells him to go to this hill. He digs up a rock, finds the gold plates under a rock, along with a sword, a famous sword from the story of one of those people. And in there are these glasses, apparently, as well, that the glasses are called the Urim and Thummim, which I think is in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
But it's it was supposed to be used for translation, but later on, when you get into the translation story, there's a whole bunch of he didn't actually really use those. He had a rock. We call it a seer stone. Most other people will call it a peep stone. But this rock that he found, that before he found the plates, and see, this is all new stuff that I had never heard before until a couple of years ago. But
really, this isn't something they taught.
The whole plates and everything, and we were taught that he found the plates and God inspired him as he read the plates to translate it, and he translated it. And he used the glasses sometimes to maybe help him with that. But what really, if you read the actual history of what happened, he had this rock that was supposed to be like a seer stone or a seeing rock where he could see things in the rock. And according to the record, he put the rock in a hat to block out the light. He put his head in the hat, and he would read the words off the rock to translate it.
I mean, it really sounds like a lot of mysticism, a lot of things that people were very afraid of at this time. Well, maybe not exactly at the time, but East Coast. I mean, go upstate, and it's about 6 hours from my house.
Yeah, okay.
You go up there, and that's near Rochester. Rochester's actually really beautiful. But yeah, I never knew about this place.
Yeah, it's a very important place in Mormon history. The Sacred Grove is near there. That's where apparently God and Jesus Christ appeared to Joseph, and when he was a 14-year-old boy, and basically said that he was the one to restore the church and everything. And so yeah, it's a very important place in Mormon history, and it's a lot of people go there. A lot of Mormons go there every year.
Of Mormons.
Yeah, in a sense.
It really
exactly.
is, right?
It is.
Yeah. Or Jerusalem, at least.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's a very important place. Okay. But
should buy real estate there.
yeah. There you go.
I'm always thinking, how can I make a quick buck?
Yeah.
So, all right. So you're going on with all of this, and you said you learned a lot of this stuff only more recently in the past few years. Is this the kind of stuff that led you to maybe a path leaving the church?
Yeah, what started me on the path actually was nothing in the history. What started me reading more into things was just kind of, going to church, reading my scriptures, reading the New Testament, things that Jesus taught, because, even though everybody else will say we're not Christians, that really offends Mormons. We'll say, oh, of course we're Christians. We believe in Christ. He's like the whole center of our theology. Mm-hmm. But we're just, we have a different belief than most Christians. So that's why people will say we're not Christian. But yeah, so I was just reading the New Testament, and I would read these words of Christ and say, our church doesn't really follow the teachings that Christ taught, and we're not very Christian, at least according to what he's teaching here. I feel like the Mormon church is very pharisaical. It's all about the little rules and making sure you do everything right. Instead of, and Christ taught a lot against that. He was fighting against that.
Right.
And so that's kind of what started it for me. And so I started reading more into, different talks from past leaders and past talks. And then that led me back further and further back into the history of what previous prophets in our church taught, leading me back to Joseph Smith, and realizing, there's all these things that that the previous prophets of the church taught that we don't teach today. So why is that? Why did they teach this and now we don't talk about that anymore? And so I started reading more and more history and learning about all these different changes that occurred over time.
Right, and that's never good. Whenever there's changes in general, it becomes a very scary thing. Just because you're wondering, all right, change is great, okay, but what was changed, and is it still accessible?
Yeah, and then it became, okay, well, and one of the core beliefs of our church is that God called a prophet. So Joseph was the first prophet, but after he was killed, God called the next prophet of the church, and the prophet is the leader of the church, but they talk with God directly, and they lead the church based on what God wants them to do. So as I would read these past teachings, I would say, okay, so God is telling this prophet what to say. Mm-hmm. This is what he's teaching, but then later on, he tells us the exact opposite. So what is God actually trying to tell us? Is it this or this? It can't be both of them.
Right. There's contradictions because man wrote it. And
exactly. And so that led me down this whole thing of, it was about a 5-year process of really delving into the history, tracking the changes, trying to figure out what was real, what wasn't.
Now, when you were doing that research, were you, did you see like the writing on the wall? Did you think this is, it's getting worse by the day kind of thing? Because you were probably uncovering quite a bit of stuff that was making you kind of question your own personal faith.
Yeah.
And maybe even just kind of regretting that, you have spent so much time with this group, but at the same time, it couldn't have all been terrible, but I mean, it's difficult to see yourself and actually be able to judge yourself critically.
Definitely. Yeah. And that actually didn't happen for a number of years. Because, I mentioned when I was younger in high school, I was kind of rebellious, didn't really follow all the rules, liked to party and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And, which, Mormons don't allow you to party, really. Yeah, exactly. And, but then what changed me was, when I was at 18 years old reading the Book of Mormon, and I kind of had this experience that I felt like God had talked to me and told me that it's true and that I need to go on a mission and all this stuff. So that experience really kept the faith for me, even as I was going through this process, because I said, okay, there's all these issues that have changed, but at least I know the Book of Mormon is true and Joseph Smith was a true prophet. I know all these things are still true, but it's changed since then. So actually what happened first in this process is I came to the conclusion that, okay, well, the modern church has strayed from what the early prophets taught. What Joseph originally taught, the modern church has strayed from that. So the modern church maybe is an apostasy, but Joseph Smith is still correct and the Book of Mormon is good and all this. And it wasn't until about 5 years into the process that I really took a serious look at Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon. And then as I got into that, I can remember it hit me like, I don't even know how to explain it. It hit me like a ton of bricks all in one moment when I was just reading this document that was going through talking about some of the things in the Book of Mormon. And I just had this thought pop into my head that said, all of these issues that you have with this church and trying to make everything fit, which is not an easy thing to do. Yeah. We call it mental gymnastics, trying to make all these different things fit, even though they don't make sense. And I said, is it possible that Joseph just made this all up from the beginning? And as soon as I had that thought, it was just perfect clarity. Just like it felt like I came out of the clouds and could see clearly, and everything fit into this perfect puzzle with just that one thought. And I said, okay, it's all just complete BS from the beginning. And that's what did it for me.
And it's not too difficult to say that about all organized religions. I mean, Although, I do follow my own religion. I think I do it mostly for my family. I have a
Mm-hmm.
kid. And it's more about, at least for me, it's more about the togetherness of family, and it's more about rituals, I guess. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
these type of things that you do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not so much that I believe on any level about an afterlife or a past
Yeah.
life or a next life. Because the reality here, with me personally, is, sadly, I believe we're like plants. We die. It's
Yeah.
we're here to live our lives, and that's it. It's
Yeah.
and when people they get kind of really into their religions, where and I know that this is another thing when it comes to a lot of religions, and Mormons are definitely into this, and that's giving a certain percentage of your funds
Oh, definitely.
to the church or to a synagogue, or it's in all organized religions to support them,
Yeah.
and on some level it makes sense, but I don't know, I just always felt, unless you're well to do, you really shouldn't have a certain guilt associated with not being, not just throwing money at this remarkably financed organization.
Mm-hmm.
Or do what you can do. You can still participate in things and help it along without paying money.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not a big fan of U2 anymore, I just find Bono a little bit hard to swallow.
Yeah.
He did have, one of the early U2 songs where he's like kind of up there preaching about something or another. He's saying how the God he believes in isn't short on cash. So I
Yeah.
think that applies to all, not Mormons in specifically, but
Yeah.
every single religion out there that asks you, hey, everything's going to be great, and here's an envelope. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what you brought up about, you're Jewish and you kind of, like you said, you may not believe all the tenets of Judaism, especially not the Orthodox, it sounds like.
Sure. No.
But you kind of go for the family aspect, the community, the ritual.
Sure.
Mormonism is very tough to do that, because in the Mormon church, it's kind of, they set it up as it's kind of an all or nothing church, because it is the truth. It's the only way to get to heaven, even though many people will say, no, every church is good and can help you down that path. But, we don't do baptisms for the dead for no reason. We believe you have to be baptized by the proper authority that only Mormons have to get into heaven.
So wait, you baptize people after the fact?
Exactly, because
do you mean like ancestors from 400 years ago, or?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Uh-huh. And that's why the church has caught some flack from it, from the Jewish people actually a few times, because of baptizing, Holocaust victims and things like that.
Yeah.
Because in our doctrine, I keep referring it as if I'm still a Mormon, even though I'm not, but it's just habit.
Sure.
But in the doctrine, it's so along with when Joseph restored the truth, one of the main things that was restored was what we call the priesthood power. And priesthood is the authority for men to act in the name of God. And to go to heaven, or the high, we believe there's different degrees of heaven. But to get to the highest heaven, you have to be baptized by the proper authority. You have to go to the temple and be sealed to your wife and your family by the proper authority. So the sealing is like creating a chain from me to my children, but then also back. So from me to my parents, to their parents, to their parents, all the way back to Adam and Eve. It's the family, the heavenly family, and you have to be baptized by the proper authority. You have to be sealed by the proper authority to be able to go to that the highest heaven. And so,
what if you're not? Is there a purgatory?
If you're not, then so you being Jewish, since you're not part of our church, and you haven't been baptized the correct way.
I've never been baptized at all.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. So, if you don't become baptized in this life, that's okay, because later on when you die,
say it, Doc. Tell me.
We can.
What happens to me?
Somebody will eventually, at some point, get your name. Now we only do it for people that we can find, trace within our own family tree, but they'll get to you eventually at some point.
Right.
Because either somebody in your family will join the church later on, or
But
later
at the same
on
time, it's really, I guess on a religious level, there's harm there, but in the reality of it all, and I hate to say in the reality of it all, but
yeah,
it's harmless. It's really kind of like these people who say, "I'm going to pray for you." It's like,
exactly.
Great. I don't believe in your God at all, but pray for me. That's nice of you. Thank you.
And that's how we view it. We view it as very harmless. It's like, okay, these people died without, either they didn't know about Christ or they just didn't know about the truth. And so we're going to baptize them with the proper authority after they're dead. They can accept it or reject it. It's not a forced thing. It gives them the opportunity in the next life to now accept or reject that baptism, because baptism,
I'm sorry.
Real quick. So baptism has to be done by immersion in water, and you can't do that after you die. You have to have a physical body to be baptized. Mm-hmm. So it has to be done on the earth. So even if we believe in the next life, there's a waiting period before heaven and everything, and there's missionaries there that'll bring the gospel to you. And so if you accept the missionaries, you accept the gospel, you learn the truth, and you want to follow it, but you can't be baptized because you don't have a body anymore. So we do that for you on the earth. So now in the next life, you can accept that baptism that we did for you by proxy, and it becomes valid, and then you can go to heaven. So, yeah.
No, it's interesting. I mean, it's definitely, it's a nice thought. There's, again, there's no harm in it, really.
Yeah, and I agree. Like that's how we view it, is like, we're just giving you the opportunity if you want to accept it. But when other people out of the church look at it, they view it as, we're converting everybody to Mormonism after you're dead. And I could see why people would take offense at that.
Right. I mean,
but we don't quite view it that way.
The Orthodox Jews and the Hasidic Jews are a lot more strict. And I would imagine that they would say flat out, no. Like, we don't want to be, thought of in the, baptized in blood of Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit and all that stuff. Yeah. It's not their belief. It's so against it. So I really see both sides of the thing on that particular thing. But
yeah,
still, I'm not really here. I'm not really seeing Mormons as being like this really kind of scary organization. But I know that there have been things that are a little bit more sketchy going on. Just like probably all religions, there's something.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess that's the distinction I should make. People that don't grow up around the church and, further away, like you're in New York, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of TV shows about the polygamous Mormons and all this stuff. And so the current church, there's a lot of different breakoffs in Mormonism. The main church is pretty kind of mainstream, not really too many weird things go on. It's, there's the polygamous groups. Those are break-off churches that most people that are in the Mormon church try to stay away from as much as possible, try not to associate with them. They think they're this complete outside group. But there are different groups of Mormons technically, because there's those break-off groups that are maybe more fundamentalist and things. And so a lot of the, when people talk about crazy Mormon things, a lot of it might be some of that stuff, some of the break-off groups, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes it can get lost of which one they're actually talking about.
So also,
But
like people refer to they use the phrases interchangeably, Mormons or LDS or Latter Day Saints. Are they all
yeah,
the same thing?
that's all the same thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Uh, it's funny you mentioned that because we tried to, as a church, we were counseled for a long time not to refer to ourselves as Mormons because that was associated with polygamy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so they said, don't refer to yourself as Mormon, call yourself a Latter-day Saint,
And don't
or you're
talk
from
about
the
Big Love,
exactly. It was,
which was a great series. I think.
yeah,
I don't know how
I,
accurate it was, but I found it entertaining.
yeah, and that's a break off group, so it's not it's not mainstream Mormonism.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so we tried to distance ourselves from the Mormon name for quite a while, and then more recently they've embraced it because that's how everybody refers to us. So now
Yeah.
they've
I mean,
embraced it, and now they advertise that way. So,
yeah.
um,
Around here,
but both are correct. Yeah.
we don't really get Mormon people in general, like walking around. We'll get from time to time Jehovah Witnesses,
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
who a little bit pushy, but they're for the most part polite.
Yeah.
And I love getting into a conversation with them because I'm pretty much getting them to roll their eyes. But but it's just kind of interesting, the whole door knocking type of thing. And
Yeah.
I know the Mormons and the Latter Day Saints, it's part of your it's saying you it's part of your mission, right, to
Definitely.
recruit, I guess, or to spread the word of Mormons.
Exactly. So yeah, Jehovah's Witnesses are a little different because
Oh, very different. Yeah.
every member of the Jehovah's Witnesses, I think, are expected to go knock doors. In Mormonism, it's like I said, it's the missionaries that do that, and
Yeah.
you serve a mission. Typically, now they change the age, so around 18 or 19, if you're a man, and women around 19 or 20, I think, will go serve a mission. It's typically 2 years, and for those 2 years, you basically completely dedicate your life to nothing but teaching the gospel to people wherever you're sent. So
And
you're sent.
outside of the experience, what do you get
Mhm.
from that?
What do you
I mean, you
get
get
from
to.
it?
Well, I'm
Uh-huh.
saying, is the goal when you're doing this to learn as well, or to get better at preaching?
Oh, yeah. So the
Or
main goal is to baptize people into the church. That's the number one
and
goal
how
is
often
to.
does that happen? How often do you walk into a Baptist house, or a house that's doesn't have maybe a faith that everyone agrees with, and they're like,
Yeah.
what, hey, give me some of that literature. Does that happen often?
Well, yeah, it all depends where you serve.
Yeah, I mean, New
So,
York, you're gonna get a hard sell no matter where you're going.
yeah, yeah. So, like South America, they convert quite a bit. Europe is much tougher. In the U.S., I don't know exactly. Like you said, different areas are tougher. But
And where was your mission?
I served in Poland,
Oh wow,
and so yeah, so I moved,
that's exciting. I
went,
mean, you're young, you go to Poland. That's kind of interesting.
yeah, and that's I actually really enjoyed my mission. I loved it.
Great food.
Yeah, the food was great. My ancestry is Polish, so
Oh,
I
kielbasa.
loved meeting my, yeah, oh yeah, hundreds of varieties of
But that's almost like
kielbasa.
a military type of thing. It's like, you go there, you travel the world, you can spread the word of
Exactly.
your faith.
Yeah, I
Uh,
learned to speak Polish.
wow.
It was a great time. I really had a lot of fun. I really enjoyed my mission. A lot of people hate their missions because
Right,
they
'cause
feel
they get
like
to New
slaves
York.
and stuff. And yeah, there you go.
And that
Yeah, I mean, it
me
all depends
slap.
on where you go. But I actually really liked it. In Poland we did a lot of. I didn't do so much knocking doors there because it wasn't very effective. So I just talked to people on the street. We taught
Hmm.
free English classes. Different service projects and things to just help people out and try to teach them about what we believed. And
Right.
I had a decent amount of success. Baptized some people there, and but I don't know how many baptisms the church does in a year. I think they said this last year. There was like a couple hundred, like 200,000 maybe.
But the church is a big church. I mean, we're not talking like
Yeah.
we're not talking about Scientology where there's 20,000 active members, which
No,
that's a real number, you know. Which is
20,000.
nuts. Yeah, like 20,000. I mean, that's like
how do they have so much
town.
money with?
Yeah,
that's pretty small.
Yeah, that's
but,
like a Huey Lewis concert.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, back in the 80s, but
Mm-hmm.
you know we're talking about millions of people, right? I mean, we're not talking about even hundreds of thousands of people who are part of the.
Yeah, it's a pretty. I mean, it's a global church. It's pretty much around the world. There's, we say 15 million members.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's, ex-Mormons, of course, will say, yeah, but only, half of those, maybe half of those are actually active members, people that actually still believe in it and still go to church and all that stuff.
Still
but
7.5 million people is.
But it's still, I mean, it's a significant group. It's not a small church by any means.
So at what point do you start, I guess, well, you said you were reading more and more about the history, and it really wasn't, I guess, jiving with you well, and you had kind of an awakening. You thought, this is inaccurate. I feel as though I've been lied to in a lot of ways, right?
Definitely.
And was it like an immediate, like, all right, screw this. You know what? I want out. And that's it? Or is it like, is there a process? Is there, immediately you get taken to a room and your whole family gets taken to a room?
Oh, yeah, that whole process. So that's, with Mormonism, there's a lot of talk of whether or not Mormonism is a cult or not a cult. And we could talk about that maybe in a little bit here. But, when I had that experience that I talked about where I realized the whole thing was all made up,
mm-hmm.
I just said, okay, well, it's completely made up, everything. And I'm like 99.9% sure of that. So I'm just not going to go anymore. So I just stopped going to church. I didn't have to meet with anybody or do anything. My bishop, who's the kind of leader of the local congregation, the bishop, after I stopped showing up for a little while, was
they're
hey,
like, what's going on?
What's going on? Are you okay? And they're very nice. I mean, great people. He wanted to meet with me, make sure I was doing okay, wanted to help me out if I needed help with anything. It wasn't like, hey, you need to come back to church. It was just like, hey, is there anything I can do to help you? Like, what's going on? Can we talk about this?
From other organizations, not. I haven't heard anyway from anyone within the Mormon institution. There's nothing like that. But in other things which have been called cults, they completely take it as an aggressive action, and they return their aggressive action.
Like I watched that Scientology documentary, Going Clear, and I mean it's
fascinating.
I mean they're like tracking people and videotaping them and all this crazy stuff. I mean Mormons would not ever do anything like that. It's when you leave the church in Mormonism, instead of people following you around and threatening you, they do something called love bombing you, and that's where.
It's like a glitter bomb.
Yeah, exactly. You could show up, you could come home from work and there could be cookies on your doorstep and a note, and it's like, I hope you're doing okay. Let me know if there's anything we can do to help you out.
Get these friggin' cookies out of here.
Exactly. And people make food for you. They'll start visiting you. Is there anything we can do to help you out? It's a very loving group of people. And, there are those stories of maybe the bishop takes things upon himself, takes it way too seriously, and maybe does some things that aren't appropriate. And when you get on the ex-Mormon sites and things, you'll read some of that stuff of like, oh, my bishop did this and this. And, there's some people that have had some maybe aggressive things. But, yeah, exactly.
And, when you do something like leave, they're going to take it, some people are going to take it as an aggressive action and have road rage type of reactions.
And that's it. It's different people react differently. But me personally, I mean, I've had maybe one bad experience in the church my entire life, and not really that bad of an experience, just kind of a minor thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I've had nothing but great experiences in the church, amazing people that I've associated with. I mean, I still have, when I was in the young men's program you start the young men's program at 12 years old, 12 to 18. And I have a leader from my young men's program that lives in a different state than me now. He still calls me every single year on my birthday to see how I'm doing, make sure I'm, just doing well, see if he can help me with anything, give me advice. Like, I've had nothing but great experiences with the people in the church.
See, everything you're talking about, and it's interesting because you're coming from a point of view where you've left the church. Is your whole family out of the church as well?
No.
I mean your immediate family. I mean, like your wife.
No, my wife is still in the church, and
does she give you the stink eye, kind of like, hey?
Yeah, it's a touchy subject,
right?
Because the church is kind of an all or nothing thing,
mm-hmm.
and one of the core tenets of going to heaven is that you're sealed to your spouse, and if your spouse no longer believes in the church, that can kind of throw a wrench into your eternal salvation in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, all things will be made right eventually, but yeah, it's a sore subject, and it's kind of gotten to the point where we just don't really talk about things a whole lot right now.
Everything you're kind of talking about, though, really, a lot of people do compare Latter-day Saints to a cult.
They do, yeah.
And you'll find a million websites out there that explain why it's a cult, but they don't really touch upon why. I mean, for the most part, I see it as kind of a basic religion that has a different philosophy and different beliefs. That kind of is a branch of Christianity or Catholicism, even.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see it as much of a cult because you don't have contracts. You don't. I mean, do you have to pay money to be a member?
No. So, yeah. And that's why I think using the word cult to describe Mormonism is maybe a little bit harsh.
Yeah, I actually agree with you a lot on that. I just don't. So
but I do
you don't think
why
it is
people.
One.
Well, it can go both ways, and I'll talk about that because I knew that question would come up, so I prepared a little bit for that one.
Okay.
Because it does kind of go both ways. Like you said, there's not some contract that there is, but not, and we'll get into that. So, like I said, I can just leave and stop showing up, and that's fine. Nobody's going to harass me. They might send the home teachers over to kind of visit me and make sure I'm doing okay, check up on me, that kind of thing. But from my experience, it's all been based out of love and not like trying to force me to do anything. It's all people that care about me, that have reached out and tried to help. So you don't get that. But calling it a cult, yeah, there's not that. Some people have different experiences, but so I looked up what the definition of a cult is. It's a very Mormon thing to do, to define words here. So, one of the first things that I found under the definition of a cult, it says a system of religious veneration and devotion directed toward a particular figure or object. So in that sense, you could consider it a cult because we believe the prophet, speaks directly to God, and in Mormonism, even though the members will deny it, it's kind of, you somewhat worship the prophet because whatever he says is like, you better do that,
Right.
And
see, if I were to define cult, I would think that it's a faith-based understanding that is intentionally created to mislead people for whether it be power or money. I mean, and that's
exactly
line.
Yeah. And that's why a lot of ex-Mormons will say, oh, it's definitely a cult, because we were lied to our whole lives about a lot of the true history. a lot of these things that the church knew about, they hid, didn't tell us about, so we were lied to about a lot of things. And, we did pay a good deal of money into the church because tithing or donating to the church, we call it tithing, comes from the Bible and everything. And tithing means a tenth. The definition of the word tithe is a tenth.
Now, is that in the Bible, though?
Tithing is in the Bible, yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm not
There's
sure.
the Malachi, the end of Malachi, it says, bring all the tithes into the storehouse of God, and, God will open the windows of heaven, something like that.
I think they meant, more along the lines of food.
Exactly. And that's exactly how it started in our church. Originally, it was food, and it was the storehouse to help people. You donated some of your food to help those that didn't have food.
Right.
But eventually, I think it was around the 1930s, if I remember correctly, the church, maybe it was before that. I'm really bad with dates, but at some point, basically the church was having all these issues with polygamy, and the U.S. stopped recognizing the church as a church, I think, and they had to reorganize, and then at some point, tithing became donating money instead of food. And so it became interpreted as you donate a 10% of your income. And that's why people will say it's a cult, because you have to donate 10% of your income if you want to go to the temple. And the temple is one of the other central tenets in the church, because the temple is the only place where you can get sealed to your family and do some of the ordinances that are necessary to go to heaven. And you can't go to the temple unless you're a regular full tithing payer. So you pay 10% of your income every year. If you don't do that, you can't go to the temple. And so you have to pay that basically to, be worthy of going to heaven.
Now, what do you know about the, I guess going another 100 years back, this is, I think, 8 years after the first writings were published, the Missouri Executive Order 44, or the Extermination Order, which, it's funny because just as you were talking about, I'm like, wasn't there something about Mormons being killed? And it became illegal to be a Mormon. Is that correct? I mean,
that is correct.
And it was like about killing them, and
they
were
so
like
Mormons,
the enemy of the state.
Yeah, they were. So, we have this,
it's crazy.
And growing up Mormon, you learn about all this history, and we're taught it in a way of, man, we were just so persecuted because we were just trying to bring back the truth to the earth, and Satan was fighting as hard as he could to prevent that from happening. And that's why all these bad things happened to the early Mormons. And when you read the history, you realize, oh, no wonder all this stuff was happening, because the Mormons were taking over the city. They were threatening people. They were burning stuff down. I mean, they were doing all these things.
Yeah, it was a complete defiance of law.
Yeah, they definitely brought it on themselves, which I learned reading the history. But all growing up, it's like we were just persecuted because we were trying to be good people. But, in Missouri, what happened was at some point, there was a lot of tension between the Missourians and the Mormons, because, this was the front line of the West. Beyond Missouri was just Indian territory, just open expanse. So it was kind of the border of the territory. So it was all these kind of rough people that lived there that were trying to escape the more East Coast type of situation, I guess, trying to be more free or whatever. And the Mormons come in, this huge group of Mormons come in, start taking over the town, and they're teaching and preaching about how, this area is the center, it's going to be Zion, and we're going to take over Zion, and this is going to be the city of God, and all this stuff. And so the Missourians were kind of getting freaked out that the Mormons were going to take this over. Yeah. And eventually, and the extermination, that was one thing that really surprised me reading the history. The first person to actually call for extermination and to use that word was a Mormon preacher named Sidney Rigdon. He was in the presidency of the church. He was the first counselor, so he was the man next to Joseph Smith. And during all of this fighting and everything, he said in a sermon, he said it's going to be a war of extermination between us and the Missourians. And pretty not too long after that is when the extermination order came out, kind of, I think somewhat as a response to that. It's like, if it's going to be an extermination war, then that's what we'll have to do to get rid of you guys or something.
It's also, it's an interesting piece of history because it's one of these things that it's out there if you want to learn it, but it's really not something that is taught. And I feel like it's kind of an important part of our nation's history.
Yeah.
That we actually, literally turned on our own people based upon religion.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean,
it's
Mormons. Yeah. Our whole history kind of gets thrown under the bus as like something. Like I met with that atheist group recently, and they said, "Oh, you were a Mormon? Like, didn't you know Joseph Smith was just a complete bullshitter? Like, how did you not know that?" And,
right now you look at it and you're like, okay, but at the same time,
now I'm like, oh, now I know all this information that everybody else in the country outside of Mormonism, like, oh yeah, it's just this guy that made up all this crap and whatever.
So
and
right now,
but there's a lot of interesting history there, though. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine. I was gonna say, so right now you're really kind of just doing your own thing. Do you consider yourself like a spiritual person or just a moral person, or?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really change much of my morals, I don't think. I still believe in a lot of the same morals that I had.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not like you're an anarchist all of a sudden.
Exactly. That is the viewpoint that we're taught our entire life, is that if you leave the church, you're going to become this kind of like devil worshiping, horrible person involved in all the things of the world, and it's going to ruin your life. And, you got to follow the Mormon rules to have a good life. Otherwise, you're just going to be lost and sad and depressed and have a crappy life.
Right. You're misled and you're just completely spiraling out of control.
Yeah, you'll be in the control of Satan and your whole life's going to be ruined. And so it's a very scary thing to even think about leaving the church. And a lot of Mormons don't ever get into the history or even start down that road because that fear is deeply ingrained. And that's part of where the whole cult thing comes in. After you get freed from it, you realize, wow, I really was kind of in this fearful mindset. And now that I'm out of it, I realize how poisoned my mind was in, looking at people that weren't Mormon as kind of maybe somewhat lesser, or that they didn't have the truth, and they're not, even though they look happy, they're not really truly happy, because the only way to be truly happy is to live this religion. Mm-hmm. And so it's a very scary thing to even start down that road.
Yeah, but, it's tough because when I feel like there's a lot of people on the high horses in all religions, and they look at everyone else as misled. One day you'll come around, and all of that type of stuff, and it's really not what it's all about.
Exactly, and within Mormonism, I had a long conversation with my mom the other day. She's still a devout believer, but there's lots of different ways that you can take things in the church. They'll teach certain things about loving everybody. And so you can kind of pick and choose and say, yeah, we accept everybody, we love everybody. But then there's other times where they'll teach things about how the only way to be happy is in the church, and you need to try your hardest to convert everybody. And so there's these different perspectives that you can take in the church. And I realized, the reason why my mom still believes is because she picks and chooses the good aspects, and the things that cause divisiveness, she kind of ignores or kind of pushes that to the side and doesn't really focus on it.
Well, I feel like, in general,
that
as
happens.
people, we have to do that in a lot of ways to just survive. You have to kind of accept what you want to accept and move forward, and I guess leave the negativity or the things that you don't agree with behind you. And
exactly. And when you get onto the ex-Mormon groups, it's kind of the opposite, because after you've left and you're angry that you've been lied to and you're angry about all these things, then you kind of do the opposite take and you focus on all the negative aspects, which there's quite a few as well. There's a lot of negative aspects to the church. And so then, ex-Mormons will typically focus on that. And
it seems to be a very well-financed operation. I think that a lot of people, at least from what I read, have a very strong bitterness towards the amount of money that, or maybe the way that the church uses the money. I'm not 100% clear on all of that. Yeah. But I know people really seem to be really, really upset over the money aspect.
Definitely. Yeah. And we can talk about that for a minute. So yeah, like I said earlier, you're basically required to pay 10% of your income to the church. If you don't, there's no penalty for it, except that you just cannot go to the temple and you're not really considered worthy.
Oh, really? So I didn't know that. So you're not allowed to, you're a member, but you're not allowed to actually go.
You can go to, so there's the church buildings and then there's the temples.
So they pay to pray. That's essentially it.
Basically, yeah. Wow, I mean, you can be a member and not pay your tithing, but if you're not paying your tithing, you can't get your temple recommend, and you're not considered in good standing. Mm-hmm. And you're not allowed to participate in the temple ordinances, which are super important. Mm-hmm. And you're not technically worthy to be saved. And so you have to pay 10% of your tithing or your income. And in the temple, one of the promises you make when you go through the temple is that you consecrate your time, talents, and money and everything you own to the church. Now, that's not something we actually do right now, but it's something you promise to do in the temple. And so, that's something that comes up sometimes in discussions at church. They'll talk about you promise to consecrate everything to the church. And so even though that's not what we're not living that law right now, at some point it could happen where all of a sudden we have to turn everything over to the church and follow the prophet and do whatever he says. That's always the option that's on the table that could happen.
Wow.
And yeah. So it's, and people donate a lot of money throughout their life. And when they leave and realize they were lied to their whole life, I can definitely see why the anger comes out.
Do you have friends who followed your path out? Or maybe are questioning it now that you left?
Yeah. So I have, there's 2 family members.
Or they're like, Ian, that idiot?
No, 2 family members that are similar belief as me, I think. But the rest of my family is all still active, believing members. I haven't really discussed things with all of my family, like all my brothers and sisters. I haven't had, really deep conversations about that with them. But with my parents, I have. I've had some friends that, have left and some friends that have not.
I was on the Reddit ex-Mormon subreddit, and there's 42,000 members there. Let's say maybe 10% of those people are just spies. So 38,000, they refer to themselves as recovering Mormons.
Yeah.
And, that's a lot of people. All right, granted, it's a tiny percentage of the 10 million.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, whatever it was. But it's at the same time, and also, it's just the people who have sought out Reddit.
Exactly, yeah.
That's a lot of people, to kind of be pissed off enough to go online. And there's countless, you know, blogs about, you know, being an, you know, ex-Mormon. They each seem to tell a different story.
Yeah.
Some of the stories are extreme. You know, there seems to be child abuse and some sex of it. And, but, you know, it doesn't seem to be consistent through. I think like any religion, when you have, you know, powerful roles with adults, there's abuse. It just is. It's a sad truth. And that goes for all religions. Again, it's just, it's a lot of pissed off people. And I'm wondering, do you think that this might be, I don't know, like kind of an exit of Mormons? Do you think there's a large portion of people leaving this faith, or is it just, or has it always been like this?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think in the church there's kind of been multiple stages of kind of, you know, larger amounts of people leaving the church, but definitely right now, definitely a huge escape from Mormonism. Lots and lots of people leaving the church. The reason being is a couple of things. One of the biggest ones, I think, is just with more information being available online and easier to find. The church cannot hide their history or the issues any longer.
Right.
And so people are, it's much easier to find these issues from the past. And
that's all, again, that's only because it's roughly 200 years old. You take Judaism, it's 3,500 years old. All of the nonsense happened centuries ago.
Exactly.
You know, so you really, you know, you can't recall, you know, a large portion of Mormon's existence has been, you know, in the modern time. So we have every printed magazine, we have every article scanned somewhere.
Exactly.
It's probably, for the most part, its entire modern existence exists online.
Pretty much,
which is kind of unfair if you're going to compare that to an ancient religion, or even, you know, Catholicism or any of these things. There's really no way to track it from, you know, 800 years ago or something.
Yeah, and all the information is out there. I mean, there's still some ambiguity with things around Joseph Smith, because, you know, the records from that specific time are kind of hit or miss, and a lot of things he didn't write directly. He had scribes and all these things. But yeah, you're right. I mean, most of it can easily be found. There's really good records from early church sources. So you can track all these things as they change. And, you know, one of the core beliefs is that God doesn't change. Maybe the things that he requires of people changes over time, but God doesn't change. And then when you read all these issues and realize, man, God either is, you know, what's the word? Like bipolar, or something's not quite right. I mean, he's just switching left and right, back and forth, and
something's full of shit here. And it's
exactly. Where's the actual truth here? And you can track that a lot easier in a more modern church.
Truth and religion are just two things. You know what I mean? It's just they shouldn't be in the same realm. There's faith, there's truth, and there's faith. There's something you could feel, and there's something that actually happened. And those two things don't always, you know, connect.
That's interesting that you say that. I've never even thought of it that way. But you're right. I mean, and that's the thing in the Mormon church, they are one and the same. Truth and faith are kind of one and the same. Like the Garden of Eden was a real, actual place. Adam and Eve were real, actual people. The flood was a physical thing that did happen to the earth. It wasn't just a theoretical thing. It was a real thing that happened.
And there are parts of Judaism where people believe that as well. You know, like they take these stories as literal stories, and it's like, you know, No,
Yeah,
it's a story. It's
exactly.
it's
And
a life lesson. That's it.
Exactly. There's good lessons that can be taught from
It's to
these
scare
things.
you. That's it.
Exactly.
The Book of Ezekiel has a UFO sighting. Is that
Yeah, there you go.
I always go to that for all my UFO friends.
I don't know that one. I'll have to
Oh,
look
really?
that up.
Yeah, look up Ezekiel. I forget. It's right in the beginning of Ezekiel. But they basically describe a UFO. It's amazing.
Okay.
A circular disc flying with fire and lights, and it's
Wow.
pretty awesome, man.
And that's that's the interesting thing about the Mormon Church. Like I said, kind of at the beginning, is how the aspect of the church is that we take all truth, and that Mormonism encompasses all truth. Mm-hmm. And so everything that's out there that's true, whether it be science or things from other religions or anything that we learn that we know to be true, somehow fits into Mormonism, and you can make it work. Although sometimes you have to do some pretty hefty lifting or bending over backwards to make it fit, you can make it all fit somehow. And so it's appealing that way. But then when you get outside of that and you realize, oh no, it's all just BS, and none of it really fits, really.
When I was younger, I always thought that the Amish were Mormons.
Oh yeah,
I mean, I don't know why I thought that.
I can maybe tell. Well, I can tell you an experience about that.
Oh really? Yeah, I love going. We spend time in Lancaster very often. Every summer we go up there, and we love it up there. And the Amish people are very nice. If they were real Amish, they could be just doing it to sell their pickled eggs to me. But,
oh yeah.
But they have the pretty flourishing economy there for tourists like me, and it's an interesting thing to see that they're all Trump fans too, which I thought was kind of interesting. Yeah, man. I went up there before the election.
I guess that makes sense. But...
And it was every single farm had Trump signs everywhere, and
wow.
You see like the buggies with like a Trump sticker on it. I didn't expect that.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was I going to say? Oh yeah. So when I was in my time in Poland, there was a movie that was popular with Harrison Ford called The Witness.
Yes.
And where he goes and stays with the Amish, right?
Yeah.
And he's like on witness protection or something, goes and lives with the Amish. And so at the time, that movie was really popular in Poland. And when they translated the word Amish into Polish, they translated it as Mormon.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And so every single person in Poland that I ever talked to, pretty much, said I was Mormon. They're like, oh, yeah, how come you're not wearing your hat? And
where's your beard?
How come
you
you're
look
using...
great with it.
Yeah, I'm like, you don't use electricity, right? And,
do you have any brothers named Jebediah?
Exactly. So they thought we were
make
Amish.
Pies?
Yeah. So everybody in Poland thought that we were Amish polygamists. So they'd ask me about the electricity, and they asked me how many wives I had.
And did you at all play along a little bit? Just go. Well,
yeah, sometimes. I mean,
I love the Amish
we joke
culture.
about it, but
I think it's interesting. It's they don't have electricity for the most part. They do have some electricity, but they don't use natural gas. They use propane tanks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they have to have it delivered. Do you have a gas grill at home? A regular gas grill. You have the little white tank. That's maybe 5-10 gallons. They have big ones, big 100-gallon tanks of those outside of their house.
Oh, okay.
And they have refrigerators that run on gas and actually create.
Really?
Yeah, it's a really interesting technology.
I did not know that.
I'll be a Mormon / Amish one day.
Yeah, you just gotta marry a couple more women and
I'm Amish.
There you go.
But that was I do think that the Mormons have they get attacked so easily online. It seems like
they do.
There are also a lot of really weird. How do I say? You'll get a Christian website and they'll say 15 ways the Mormons are nuts. And
Oh yeah.
it starts going into, they believe that this is such and such, when we really know that it's Jesus, that is the blood of blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you're just as nuts. Like, what are you talking about? Like, and I don't mean to call anybody nuts. It's just, you're talking about the same thing. You're talking about, your Jesus character rose from the dead like a zombie. Like, I don't...
Exactly.
It's zombie Jesus, and, and then... I don't understand really all of this stuff, and when it really comes down to it, Jesus was a rabbi, so I feel good with that.
Yeah, there you go.
He was a teacher. No, I think that people should choose a religion that fits them and suits them, but they shouldn't feel as though they have to choose one way or another, or feel as though the religion alters their life in any way negatively.
Yeah,
should just never do that.
I agree. And that's the hardest part for me leaving the church. I left the church kind of out of principle, because in the church, it really is kind of all or nothing. It's like, this is the truth, and this is what you have to do to go to heaven. Otherwise, you're lost and, you're wrong.
But what about your kids?
And yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah. If you don't mind me asking, how old are your kids? Like,
I have three boys, 2, 4, and 6 right now.
2, 4, and 6. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's tough, because what I miss the most about the church is that kind of community aspect. Meeting with people, making friends there, kind of having these activities together. Mm-hmm. All that stuff is really good about the church. People helping each other.
See, that's why I'm part of my own personal, why I follow Judaism, because of that, of the community of it. I don't think there's anything wrong with, well, like you said, you have to be all in. So, you can't really fake it.
Yeah, and there is a whole group of Mormons now called the New Order Mormons, and it's kind of people maybe that have similar beliefs as me, but they try to make the church work still. Mm-hmm. And so they still go to church, they still do everything, trying to make it work, even though they don't believe it.
Right.
But it's very hard to do, and a lot of them try it, and it doesn't work, because, let's say your kid turns 8 years old and it's time to be baptized into the church. And, if you do that, it means certain things. If you don't do it, you're kind of, looked down on, like maybe there's something wrong with this family. Like, why aren't their kids getting baptized, or what's going on here? And it's not really a pick and choose type of religion. It's kind of an all or nothing thing. And it's, for those New Order Mormons, it's really hard. A lot of them really struggle. Yeah. And I think eventually leave the church because it doesn't really work. And so, for me at this point, a lot of me is trying to look out and say, okay, is there some other kind of group, or I hate to call it a church even, but that's probably what it'll be called. But is there some kind of organization or group or church that we can go to as a family to have this community, to have this togetherness, this helpful aspect, but not have to believe in these dogmatic all or nothing beliefs, and be forced to pay 10% of my income and all this stuff,
See, it's like the non-denominational type of thing. It's just the problem that I think that I have with that is you just get a lot of people who just want to talk about what they did instead of what they want to do. They want to talk about all their regrets and.
Oh, really? Yeah.
It's like when you do meet a lot of new atheists, or they just want to talk about, well, I did this, I did that, and it's like you're not looking for support. You're looking for sort of a support group, but not like that. You're looking for a community. Yeah,
like something to be involved in where you do good in the community. You have a group of people to.
We belong to the Cub Scouts as well.
yeah, and I'm an Eagle Scout. So
are you really?
Yeah, the church is very into Cub Scouts. I did that
my kid's a
younger,
bear.
So
he's a bear this year. I'm one of the leaders. And that's crazy, because it's that I was like kind of roped into, And I didn't realize how involved you get in with the community. Like this weekend we're doing a sleepover on a battleship, like the Intrepid that's in Manhattan.
No way.
And,
That's
cool. And it's super pricey. It's crazy.
I bet.
But it's one of these things. It's we have like 60 kids, not 60 kids. We have 30 kids and 30 parents, and we're all gonna go there. And we're gonna have this great time. It's gonna be a great bonding experience. And we're talking, it's a very big mix as well. I mean, you have Catholics, Christians, Jews, Orthodox Jews, and we don't have any Muslims yet. Although we do have they're coming, I'm sure.
Yeah,
like we have a
matter of time.
We have a mosque actually in our town, which is one of the things you don't expect to see when you drive through. I live in a town called Hewlett, and it's a very, very Jewish area, and it's just like out of nowhere, it's like Five Towns Mosque. It's like, whoa, what's that all about?
Huh.
And but no, they're good. They're decent people. They're good community. They're
Yeah.
It's just the way this entire country is going. We're getting more and more mixed. And I guess that's good. But you said you're in Utah?
I live in Southern California now.
Why did I think you're in Utah?
I grew up. I was born and raised in Utah and Salt Lake City. Right. So.
You're in California now. So.
Yep, Southern California. Just recently moved out here, so pretty new out in this area.
You can go get an In-N-Out burger and you'll be good to go. Like,
all
your problems go away when you get an animal style burger.
Oh yeah, the animal style.
Oh
too.
yeah,
that's the way I get it every time.
I lived out there for a short stint. In,
did you?
Probably the most crime-ridden area of LA.
Oh really?
Yeah. I lived across the street from what was referred to the Rock and Roll Denny's, where all the hookers used to hang out.
Wow.
And it was a cool place. It was a very salmon-colored apartment building, and there's a million of those out there. Yeah. But LA is a tough town.
Yeah, I'm in the South Bay area. It's a little more relaxed.
Yeah, it's a little bit nicer.
Yeah, it's a nice spot. I like it.
Yeah. But
I love back.
California.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that you do have to stick with your gut with a lot of this kind of stuff, and
yeah, it's tough. Like Boy Scouts is something that I really want to be involved in.
Are your boys? Your 6-year-old
they're not old enough yet, but it's something that I think I'd like them to be involved in. I loved it as a kid. I loved hiking and camping and all that kind of stuff.
I think your 6-year-old might be old enough for next year to be a tiger.
Yeah, I think you're right. To start Cub Scouts, I think
because my kid's in his 3rd year doing it, and he's 8.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he's probably starting soon.
And actually, they believe it or not, they even they have one that's earlier. They're just introducing. I don't know if it got to the West Coast yet. I'm forgetting what it's called, but it's for kindergarten.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's cool. It's like you get these cute. It's cute. Instead of the kid playing soccer where he's like picking up rocks and filling up his shorts with rocks, he's gonna go on a mile hike or learn about composting or something.
Exactly.
It's so much better, and this is my sexist comment of the day. It's where boys can be boys. Where it's just okay. I mean, granted, they've opened the doors so girls can join, but boys can just go and get dirty and do boy things. And, and kind of, my son loves it. So that's all that matters, right? With any of your kids.
Yeah. And I think my kids will love it. I mean, we go camping with them and stuff, and
cool.
And, but that's something I struggle with. The Mormon Church is very involved in Boy Scouts.
I never knew that. So, I mean, I guess I guess depending on where you go, it's, there's even a Jewish aspect to Cub Scouts anyway.
Oh, yeah?
I don't know about Boy Scouts. But yeah, they have special, what do they have now? They have the sliders for the belt now. They used to have beads, but they've retired the beads.
Yeah. Mormonism is very, I mean, everybody that I knew growing up that was Mormon was in Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts. And it's part of every church group that I've ever been to. There's a scout program.
My wife was immediately saying no because she was like, "Isn't it Catholic?" I think that a lot of people associate the Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts with religion.
Yeah, because I think usually it's kind of church groups that
We meet in
organize
a
it and
church.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's how, I mean, all of my scout meetings were all at our church, all grown up. So
See, when I was a kid, I was only I went up to being a Weeblo. You're
okay.
like, Weeblo. But,
Weak sauce.
yeah, exactly. It's like, nice giving up.
Yeah.
I was like running home to watch Joni Loves Chachi instead. I was like, I can't go to these meetings and watch TV.
Yeah.
So, it's, so we meet in a church and all this kind of stuff. But to bore you a little bit on our thing, we found out recently that the pack that we have, it's called Pack 20.
Okay.
It's not a troop anymore. It's it's a pack. I think when Cub Scouts are packs, and then when the Boy Scouts are troops.
Troop. Yeah. Okay.
But our actual pack dates all the way back to 1917, which was one of the original ones. Yeah. And there's we have Theodore Roosevelt's house here on Long Island, and he's standing on the lawn with one of the troops from back then. It's actually Troop 20. So I just thought that was kind of cool. Yeah,
that is pretty cool.
Yeah, so we kind of opened everyone's eyes to that. We had like our little blue and gold thing a
couple
couple weeks ago. But like things
cool.
like that. Like, all right, I have a Jewish background, you have a Mormon background, and this is where we kind of connect. It's like where we have a bit of rapport. And that's what I kind of like. That's the kind of community maybe you're looking for also, is like where can everyone kind of meet in the middle?
Yeah, and it doesn't matter your beliefs,
right.
That's totally out of the picture. It's just like, hey, let's, get to know each other. Let's help each other out. Let's have these groups together, get together things. Let's do some community service.
And it's possible that the Mormons were developed or invented or created for that reason in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I mean, the Mormon Church is really good at doing that. The downside with the Mormon Church on that aspect is there can be a lot of sometimes there can be some shunning or that type of thing if you leave the church or you don't really believe it anymore or that type of thing.
Right.
Lots of people have different experiences leaving the church. My family is very understanding, loving, caring. It's like, all right, that's what you believe. Okay. I mean, I think maybe you're wrong, but that doesn't change anything between us. Mm-hmm. But, some people leave the church and their family disowns them and they're kicked out of the house or, lots of extreme stuff. And that's why you'll see a lot of angry ex-Mormons as well. I mean, they've been kicked out of their house and disowned by their family.
It's crazy.
So, yeah. I mean, it boggles my mind because my family has never been that way, but
right.
I could definitely see how that occurs within the church. But
yeah, I mean, me kicking out my son, that's just nuts.
I know. I can't even
imagine kicking out one of your 3 kids.
I know. Like, I can't even. I don't even know how that's possible.
That's why we'll be better parents moving forward.
Yeah, I hope so. Exactly.
But Ian, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this this chat. You've opened my eyes up to a lot of the Mormon ways, and I don't know. I guess I'm walking away with the same kind of feeling I had in the beginning. Is I don't really think of the Mormons as being too. I'm not going to say it's a cult. I'm going to say that it's realistically just their own belief system. Which is essentially a religion. And, I don't know. I just don't see the cultish ways, at least in comparison to other more extreme, unnamed places.
Yeah, I agree. And that, again, that comes from my perspective. You'll probably get some people that'll there'll probably be a lot of ex-Mormons maybe that rip on me and my perspective because I didn't maybe cover some of the more cultish things. A lot of them were in the past,
mm-hmm.
The whole like polygamy and there used to be an oath in the temple where you'd slit your throat if you ever told anybody about it. And so there's definitely some cultish things that are there. I think it's more so in the past. And in general, like you
There's
said,
always
I think
skeletons in the closet of religions.
exactly.
I mean, I know with the Mormons, they had a bit of a racist tinge to the to where black people came from.
Yeah, that's a very big issue.
I mean,
yeah,
it's crazy. It's very 1830s racist.
oh yeah, definitely.
But you know, at the same time, it's probably completely a normal way of thought 200 years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
For a white man, yeah.
Yeah, it kind of followed the prevailing thoughts of the time, but delayed by maybe 50 years.
You don't dig enough into any religion, you're going to find skeletons.
Yeah. True.
And we know that. I mean, we accept it, I think, also. It's just, even Scientology, you know, these religions are new. They're, you know, and it's hard to take things seriously when they're new. Granted, you know, Mormons are less than 200 years old. It's still a very long time.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to be said. If you want to attack something, I guess Scientology or...
yeah. But, no, you know, that's what I was thinking when I was listening to your Scientology episode was, you know, all these people that leave, of course they're mad because of all the issues. But, I mean, they were in the church for a certain amount of time for some reason. I mean, they weren't forced to be members. Same with people that are Mormon. I mean, we weren't forced to follow this. I did it by my own choice because it kind of worked for me for a little while, and I believed it. And yeah, maybe I was brainwashed or whatever, but I mean, I believed it, and it worked for me. I loved a lot of aspects of it. And then, you know, I mean, people are Scientologists for some reason. I mean, they're not forced to go there.
Well, you know, right? I think it was Ron Miscavige was interviewed on the Joe Rogan podcast the past couple of weeks.
Oh, yeah?
And he's the dad of, I forget his first name, the other Miscavige that runs Scientology. He's like the big, really? You know, he's like the big kahuna. Yeah. And
so the dad of the leader.
His dad, and he claims to have been forced.
Really?
It's an interesting interview. Actually, Joe Rogan interviewed Leah Remini a couple months ago, which was a fascinating piece. You know, actually, her book is pretty good, too. Her shows. I find Scientology kind of amazing. There's something about it that I find fascinating.
It is interesting, for sure.
And I've gone into the center out in L.A., and...
Oh, really?
I don't know. They didn't force me to stay or anything. They invited me in.
I'm too afraid to even get my name on their rolls because I don't know.
I didn't give my real name.
Oh, okay. I mean, after watching that episode, I'm like, I'm never giving them my name.
It's like, do you have impure thoughts? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But, yeah, man, again, thank you so much for getting together.
Yeah,
I'd love for you to
anytime.
come on again. You know, we do these once in a blue moon. We'll have this little round table thing, like the Scientology episode. So
yeah,
I mean,
it was great.
If you ever want
great
to come
talking
on,
to you. Great getting to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, man.
Anytime, and maybe in the next time I'll tell you all about the connection between Jews and Mormons too. There's some interesting stuff there, but
no, for volume 2.
There you go. Yeah, but yeah, it was great talking to you.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much.